You are very right, my dear brother, very right. The twins pressed each other's hands in silence, and in his own homely manner brother Charles related the particulars he'd heard from Nicholas. The conversation which ensued was a long one. When it was over, a secret conference of almost equal duration took place between brother Ned and Tim Linkinwater in another room. It is no disparagement to Nicholas to say that before he had been closeted with the two brothers 10 minutes, he could hardly wave his hand at every fresh expression of kindness and sympathy, and sob like a little child. At length, brother Ned and Tim Linkinwater came back together, when Tim instantly walked up to Nicholas and whispered in his ear in a very brief sentence, for Tim was ordinarily a man of few words, that he had taken down his address in the Strand and would call upon him that evening at 8. Having done which, Tim wiped his spectacles and put them on, preparatory to hearing what more the brothers Cheeryble had got to say. "Tim," said brother Charles, "you understand that we have an intention of taking this young gentleman into the counting-house." Brother Ned remarked that Tim was aware of that intention and quite approved of it, and Tim, having nodded, said he did, drew himself up and looked particularly fat and very important, after which there was a profound silence. "I'm not coming half an hour later in the morning, you know," said Tim, breaking out all at once and looking very resolute. "I'm not going to sleep in the fresh air. No, I'm not going into the country either. A pretty thing at this time of day, certainly." "Damn your obstinacy, Tim Linkinwater," said brother Charles, looking at him without the faintest spark of anger and with a countenance radiant with attachment to the old clerk. "Damn your obstinacy, Tim Linkinwater. What do you mean, sir?" "It's 44 year," said Tim, making a calculation in the air with his pen and drawing an imaginary line before he cast it up. 44 year next May since I first kept the books of Cheeryble Brothers. I've opened the safe every morning at the same time, Sundays expected, as the clock struck 9, and gone over the house every night at 10:30, except on foreign post nights when I do it 20 minutes before 12, to see that the doors are fastened and the fire's out. I've never slept out of the back attic one single night. There's the same mignonette box in the middle of the window and the same 4 flower pots, two each side, that I brought with me when I first came. They ain't. I've said it again and again, and I'll maintain it, that there ain't such a square as this in all the world. I know there ain't," said Tim with sudden energy and looking sternly about him. "Not one. For purpose or pleasure, in summer or winter time, I don't care which, there's nothing like it. There's nothing such a spring in England as the pump under the archway. There's not such a view in England as the view out of my window. I've seen it every morning before I shaved, and I ought to know something about it. I've slept in that room," added Tim, sinking his voice a little, "for 44 year. And if it wasn't inconvenient and didn't interfere with the business, I should request leave to die there too." "Damn you, Tim Linkinwater! How dare you talk of dying?" roared the twins by one impulse, and blowing their noses very violently. "This is what I've got to say, Mr. Edwin and Mr. Charles," said Tim, squaring his shoulders again. "This isn't the first time that you've talked about superannuating me. But if you please, we'll make it the last, and drop the subject evermore." With those words, Tim Linkinwater stalked out, and shut himself up in his glass case with the air of a man who had had his say and was thoroughly resolved not to be put down. The brothers interchanged looks and coughed some half a dozen times. "He must be done something with, Brother Ned," said the other warmly. "We must disregard his old scruples. He can't be tolerated or borne. He must be made a partner, Brother Ned. And if he won't submit to it peaceably, we must have recourse to violence." Quite right, Brother Ned, nodding his head as a man thoroughly determined. Quite right, my dear brother. If he won't listen to reason, we must do it against his will and show him that we are determined to exert our authority. We must quarrel with him, Brother Charles. We certainly must have a quarrel with Tim Linkinwater, said the other one. But in the meantime, my dear brother, we are keeping our young friend, and the poor lady and her daughter will be anxious for his return. So let us say good-bye for the present, and there, take care of that box, my dear. Yes, and no, not another word now. Be careful of the crossings, and with many disjointed and unconnected words which would prevent Nicholas from pouring forth his thanks, the brothers hurried him out, shaking hands with him all the way and affecting very unsuccessfully, they were poor hands at deception, to be wholly unconscious of the feelings that mastered him. Nicholas' heart was too full to allow to his turning into the street until he had recovered some composure. When he at last glided out of the dark doorway in which he had been compelled to halt, he caught a glimpse of the twins stealthily peeping in at one corner of the glass case, evidently undecided whether they should follow up their late attack without delay, or for the present postpone laying further siege to the inflexible Tim Linkinwater. To recount the delight and wonder which the circumstances just detailed awakened at Miss Nickleby's, and all the things that were done and said and thought, expected and hoped and prophesied in consequence, is beside the present course and purpose of these adventures. It is sufficient to state in brief that Mr. Timothy Linkinwater arrived punctual to his appointment that evening, that, oddity as he was, and jealous as he was bound to be of the proper exercise of his employer's most comprehensive liberality, he reported strongly and warmly in favour of Nicholas, and the next day Nicholas was appointed to the vacant stool in the counting-house of Cheeryble Brothers, with a present salary of £120 a year. And I think, my dear brother, said Nicholas' first friend, that if we were to let them have that little cottage by Bow, which is empty, at something under the usual rent. What do you think, Brother Ned? Oh, let 'em have it for nothing at all, said Brother Ned. We're rich and should be ashamed to touch the rent under such circumstances as these. Where is Tim Linkinwater? For nothing at all, my dear brother, nothing at all. Well, perhaps it would be better to say something, Brother Ned, suggested the other mildly. It would be better to have just a little something to pay. It would help to preserve habits of frugality, you know, and remove any painful sense of overwhelming obligation. We might say £15 or £20, and if it was punctually paid, make it up to them in some other way, and I might secretly advance a little small loan towards a little furniture, and you might scarcely advance another small loan, Brother Ned, and if we find them doing well, as we shall, there's no fear, we can change the loan into gifts. Carefully, Brother Ned, and by degrees, and without pressing upon them too much. What do you say now, Brother Ned? Brother Ned gave his hand upon it, and not only said it should be done, but it had to be done in one short week. So Nicholas took possession of the stool, and Mrs. Nickleby and Kate took possession of the cottage at Bow, and all was hope, bustle, and light-heartedness. There surely never was such a week of discoveries and surprises as the first week of that cottage. Every night when Nicholas came home, something new had been found. One day it was a grapevine, and another day it was a boiler, and another day it was the key under the front parlour closet at the bottom of the water butt, and so on, through 100 items. Then this room was embellished with a muslin curtain, and that room was rendered quite elegant by a window blind, and such improvements were made as no one could have supposed possible. Then there was Miss Nickleby, who had come out in the omnibus to stop a day or two and help, and who was perpetually losing a very small brown paper parcel of tin tacks and a very large hammer, and running about with her sleeves tucked up to her wrists, and falling off pairs of steps and hurting herself very much, and Mrs. Nickleby, who talked incessantly and did something now and then, but not very often, and Kate, who busied herself noiselessly everywhere and was pleased with everything, and Smike, who made the garden a perfect wonder to look upon, and Nicholas, who helped and encouraged them every one, all the peace and cheerfulness of home restored, with such new zest imparted to every frugal pleasure, and such delight to every hour of meeting as misfortune and separation alone could give. In short, the Nicklebys were social and happy, while the rich Nickleby was alone and miserable.